The signs in front of our schools and churches have been changed to recognize the times we are in since September 11th, 2001. We see a lot of God Bless America. One sign in front of a public high school particularly struck me recently. The words simply said, "Stay strong." Stay strong. As I looked at those words, they didn't seem to come from some sort of macho, bravado viewpoint. Rather, the words seemed to spring from vulnerability, woundedness, and fear, recognizing how terrifying some of the possibilities before us are, and remembering the images that have been burned into our collective consciousness on September 11th. The words, "Stay strong," are very striking. How do we stay strong in the midst of all of this? There's no normal that we can return to, but how do we get past fear? I would like to connect those two notions for our reflection and prayer. Stay strong and get past fear. As individuals and as a nation, we cannot live out of fear. The first two chapters of Habakkuk, the prophet of the Hebrew Scriptures, almost sound like they were written for us. As the prophet looks around him, he sees only violence and destruction. He even asks the questions that I've heard people ask recently. Where is God in all of this? Is God listening to us? Is God with us? And God gives a response to Habakkuk and to us. God says, amidst all that is frightening and all that is challenging, we are to remember our vision and live out of that vision. Part of staying strong and part of getting beyond fear is remembering and articulating and living our vision. Who are we as God's people? Who are we as members of the reign of God? There are three passages from Scripture that I think contain elements of what our shared spiritual vision should be. The first is in the first chapter of the second letter to Timothy, where the author reminds us that we are to live out of love, realizing that we are unconditionally loved and accepted by Abba, our Creator parent. In turn, we are to share love at home, in practical ways, at work, in our neighborhoods. And from this grounding in love, it says we are to move away from our fears to a courage about life despite challenging circumstances. In fact, 2 Timothy says we should expect to share in some hardships. 2 Timothy also reminds us to live disciplined, ordered lives. The second passage of Scripture takes us back to the prophet Habakkuk. Here we see another element of the vision that we are to live that runs through the passage, and that is patience. Amidst life's difficulties, we are to be patient with each other, patient with the course of history, patient with the course of events transpiring nationally and internationally. Then, in Luke 17, Jesus adds another dimension to this vision of life that we're called to, a vision that will help us stay strong and get past fear. There, Jesus calls us to be servants in all that we do, in our work, in our professional lives, in our ministries, in our parishes and congregations. We're called to be humble servants. We are not to live or work for praise. We are not to live or work for recognition. 6 characteristics for our spiritual vision: love, courage, a realization and a realism about sharing in hardships, discipline, and service. But there is more. Earlier in Luke 17, Jesus says that if we have faith the size of a mustard seed, we can command a mulberry tree to be uprooted and plant it in the sea, and it will happen. We must have faith. What is faith? Faith is a relationship with God. Faith is a body of truths and convictions. But faith is also this vision that I'm speaking of. Faith is an outlook on life. Faith is a viewpoint, an attitude that runs through and influences all that we do and all that we are. If we have a vision faith that is passionate about the presence and activity of God in our lives, then we have tremendous power in our lives. Jesus says, even if we have a little bit of faith, a little bit, we will be able to do tremendous things. I believe that if we have this kind of faith as vision for life, although we may be victimized by terrorism again in the United States, although we might even suffer some great hardships because of the terrorism, we will be able to pass through it and arrive at new life. Passionate faith teaches us that God's truth and God's way will always prevail, and God's truth and God's way will always be good for the human family. I believe that as a nation, we need to protect ourselves against foes. As a nation, we must engage in activities that will lead our country and our world to justice using proportionate military activities. But I also believe if we're going to stay strong and get past fear, our vision must also include forgiving those who've hurt our country, in fact, forgiving all who have hurt us throughout our lives. I've discovered in research that forgiveness involves some difficult steps. We need to enter into the hurts and the woundedness of our lives and not deny them. We need to feel the pain of what happened to us as a nation. We need to allow ourselves to feel the pain of all the hurts throughout our lives. Then, feeling the pain, we must move on to some kind of empathy or understanding. What was going on in the life, the history, the background, the cultural context of the people who hurt us? There is no forgiveness without empathy. And then we need to enter into some healthy guilt so that we can better identify with the people who hurt us. By healthy guilt, I mean we have to realize that we have also hurt people many times. In realizing that, we need to generate grateful memories of times that we have been forgiven by other people. And as we have some of these elements of entering the hurt and empathy and healthy guilt and grateful memories moving within us, all of this can prompt us to move toward a decision to forgive. The essence of forgiveness is that it is a gift. In it, we let go of the need to get even and to hurt back. And whether we go to the people we are forgiving or not, we need to make public, at least with one other person, our decision and action to forgive so that that one other person can help us stay and grow in the mode of forgiveness. And sometimes we need to do the work of forgiveness, the process of forgiveness, over and over and over again. A final piece of the vision that will make us strong and help us get past fear is to be more regular and to deepen our prayer lives. In Luke 17 and Matthew 6, Jesus gives us a model prayer. It's come to be known as the Lord's Prayer. In giving us this prayer, Jesus is not saying, always say this particular prayer. He says, when you pray, pray like this. I encourage us to study the Lord's Prayer as a model of holistic, integrating prayer for all of us. Stay strong, grow strong, get past fear. How do we do this in the face of difficult times? We remember who we are. Remember our vision, that we are to be people grounded in love, people of courage, people who are realistic about struggle, people who are disciplined, people who are patient, people who want to serve, and we are to be people who work the process of forgiveness over and over again and we are to be people of prayer. In fact, prayer is practicing the vision of who we are. Parents in the audience, these are frightening times. If we feel fear as adults, imagine what our children must feel, intuiting fear from us or just having their own fears and perceptions. I challenge all of you who are mothers and fathers, whatever your faith tradition might be, to take time each day to pray with your children. Teach them about the remarkable ability we have to connect with a higher power. Teach them about the remarkable vision for life that flows from being a person of prayer. It is through prayer especially that we can stay strong, that we can get beyond fear.